entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog. Houston Open, DFS picks, final bets, the weather, Underdog, plus all of the lineups that you've come to expect with myself and Toe Tag and Tambo. Tyler Tamboline, you were not on the show last week because I had to leave early, but I won a bunch of money. I almost won the $25, which is huge.
It is huge. You're having a great season, Pat, and it goes with our age-old thing. Now it's not just me. It's whenever somebody's out of the studio or not together, chemistry-wise, on the show, the other person just seems to have a really good week.
Do we have to split up for our own financial sake?
We have to. We'd be rich. Well, we wouldn't even need to do these shows, Pat.
That's true. I mean, we would just give up the show. Well, we would have to do the show just with someone else individually, and then we can win all the money on DraftKings.
Yeah, we might even be chopping it at that point. We can't chop it when we're doing these lineups together, but we could chop it if we did separate hosting duties and separate shows. That's the key.
That is the move. I want to remind everyone, if you want to leave a comment in the live chat, you need to be subbed to Mayo Media Network. And as I teased on yesterday's show with Jeff, I have a big giveaway trip coming. Tickets for 2 to Toronto to see the PME live show on June 7th. We also get 2 days of tickets, Friday and Sunday, 2 tickets apiece to the Canadian Open and tickets to the Jays on Thursday night, along with hotel rooms. That is going to come out next week in preparation for the Masters. Plus, the tickets will go on sale soon, just individually for the live show, hopefully by the end of the week. If you're not subbed to the free newsletter, you need to do that right now. I want to review with you for a second what happened last week in terms of this weather wave. When I came onto the show, I said, I'm just going to play it both ways because I just see weather being wrong. We've been victims long enough, and it's gone against us so many times that I felt that just leaning into the bad side was the move, and it was the move.
It worked out as the move. Yeah. I think that was a big confusion piece for a lot of people that get to victory lap it now and are having fun with it. I don't care what anybody says when you get that week. What I actually think is people push a weather edge way too often, way too much, way too hard when there's nothing there. Last week, while it didn't work out, there was definitely something there. It's literally everything we always talk about. The temperature differences between the mornings, the wind on both sides, the amount of wind, the speeds of winds, all those things. So the fact that it didn't work out is not going to discourage me on a week like that. I played about 80% of my lineups for the full stack of 6-0. And one of the biggest things, Pat, I talked about this yesterday, but I think this is crazy. We always talk about we live in the bubble. And when it was the players many years ago, not to bring up old scars, but just to say the players that year, remember, it was only like 7% that went all in. And nobody really did the other side. Now, this year, a lot more than that. I mean, we're years past that now. And obviously things have got stronger. People learn. But I was blown away that only 23% were all in on 6-0. So that just goes to show. And now, again, doesn't matter what happened, how it worked out. That's the results. I'm playing for the actual process of how I'm going to play it each week. Usually people are playing a weather edge when there actually is none. Last week, it looked like a extreme weather edge, and only 23% of the field even went for it. So there was still huge leverage there if you were all in on a weather stack. It just didn't play out. That was it.
I made 50 lineups. I allocated 25 to the good wave, 20 to the bad wave, and then 5 mixed that I was just screwing around with just to play the both sides of it. But I've been playing the split tees almost like you have in a way, just to make my teams different as just a strategy. Like if I like enough guys from this side, enough guys from this side, I may as well split them up because I know even if there is no weather wave, it might just work out that you luck yourself into one, just like you might luck yourself out of one here when the weather doesn't actually materialize.
Exactly that. And I've talked about that forever. Everybody always talks about weather wave advantage. And I just talk about wave advantage. We're just playing waves in some cases. And the reason is you'll get naturally contrarian lineups. By the way, spoiler alert, Texas, great place to do this. If you've done it in the past, this is a really good spot. I know there's big rain this week and things like that, but I think you nailed it there. And that's kind of the concept I've always gone with. It's worked out really well for me in the past. And I think people forget that too. If there's 40 PGA DFS weeks, let's call it, you're probably losing like 35 or more. Like it's just going to be that way, right? You're looking for those pop weeks where you get it. Like you just had one again last week, Pat. If you can find those weeks, you're doing really well, right? For the season, you already talked about you were in for plus money before that even happened. Now you got even more to work with. So everything's good, but that's exactly how I'm thinking about it. So I'm gonna always play that advantage we had last week going in. I don't care that it didn't actually end up being a huge advantage. I care about the before more than the after, as much as that sounds weird because you want the end result and the money.
For sure. And I've had 4 really big weeks, and I'm not counting the players where I won that $3,000 ticket, which I talked to Sia about last week that I was uncomfortable using because I was going to do the anti-weather stack in that 8-person tournament. And I was like, yeah, I don't have the guts for this. I'm going away with a very early flight on Wednesday. I don't even really have time to tinker with it if I want to, if news comes out. So I abstained from it. If I had put any of my lineups in, I'm in the Fantasy Golf World Championship right now.
You're still going to get there. You know what you're doing. I get that one. I know that is a good spot to do it. You and I texted offline, just messaging about it, saying like, what's the strategy? That's like, that would have been a perfect time to do it because it's such a clean advantage. Clear that if everyone's going to go one way or using projections of a mix and you just go the opposite wave and have all the guys within there, even if you didn't have Victor or JT, you're probably still in good shape. But I think there's a lot of good upcoming weeks that you can use it versus others. So that it's just really taking advantage of an 8-person field where even second place, I think, gives you another crack at it, money back or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it's $4,000 to second place in that 8-person tournament. I missed out on it this week. It was full by the time I went to go enter it. So maybe I'll take my shot at Valero next week. We'll see. I do want to talk about the weather for this week because I think once again that it makes more sense to almost play both sides of it because we don't really know if guys are going to stay on the course, if guys are going to get pushed and have to finish their second round on Saturday. Like the guys who go out early on Thursday, there's a chance that they don't finish until Saturday morning, which I don't know if put them at a disadvantage, at an advantage, because getting out on the course early enough on Thursday, you get a little bit of rain, not much. So it soaks it up a little bit. Temperatures are fine. They're mid 60s, but you get almost no wind until midday. And then it becomes super windy, rain coming around the nighttime into the next day that you might be able to put up some scores early on Thursday, and then we'll see what happens in terms of the weather after that. But that does seem to be the cleanest block of, if you're thinking about it in quadrants of 4 tee times, you have your AM, PM, AM, PM, Thursday and Friday. AM Thursday does look like the only clean patch of weather that we get the entire time. So it might be somewhat advantageous, whether it be first round showdown. I'll have some underdog plays here in a little bit. You can always hit the time codes after the fact. Maybe I'll try to take advantage of that. But and there could, again, it could be just like last week where there's absolutely no advantage to doing it whatsoever. But with rain and then delays, some guys just go through it well. Some guys don't. It's really hard to predict.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, though, is everything that we just talked about is that almost like when you get a flop leg on a player in DFS, right? Where like everyone was on them, now nobody wants them. Everyone was on the, not everyone, like we said, less than 23% or whatever it was all in last week on a wave stack, but it didn't work. So that's going to shy people away from it here. And I was already interested in it in Texas, regardless of the weather. Now I'm going to do it even more because I love that stuff anyway. So to me, it helps make your lineups different. Scottie and Rory, by the way, 2 separate tee times. So if you build Scottie with his side, Rory with his side, you can do stuff like that and then have some to mix if you want. But for me, I do think this is a good week to do it anyway. And then the weather in this case actually might push it that way. Showdown, save some bankroll for Showdown this week if you don't do that already, because Showdown becomes pretty clear on weeks like this. Like you already know what's going on. Things get moved. Maybe the contests aren't as good because DraftKings is always a bit scared of the weather, but for contest sizing. But I do think in general, Showdown gets easier for that matter. It's the week-long stuff where I'm definitely going to take some chances on either side.
Final bets for the week. I went over most of these with Jeff. That was the pleasure of doing it on Tuesday. First thing Monday, you're trying to get all your thoughts together. Like, oh, I like this guy. Do I like this guy? Jeff and I try to talk it through. We used to do our show on Tuesdays. That's back when we hit far more winners. Maybe there's something to doing it on Tuesdays that it gives you a day to breathe, consume some content from other people along with what you're doing yourself, and then move on from there. But the Monday show, Tambo, was the best show of the year with me, Custon, Jeff, talking about the majors. Cuss had some wild takes on the golf majors.
That's going on,
year.
yeah. I'll be getting to that one. And I was laughing last night too when you first posted out about the event. And then what did Jeff say? It was like once in a lifetime opportunity or something. You can bring your mother-in-law. Like it's going to be great. I'm excited for this event.
So my final betting card is as follows. I have Tony Finau at 33-1. That is at CoolBet. They're also offering a 30% boost up there as well. And I'll have something very special coming out in conjunction with them starting next week where you can win that trip. That's where it's going to be. Min Woo Lee, 40-1. Kevin Yu, 70-1 with 8 places. So Finau and Min Woo are the only 2 golfers that I bet that do not have placements attached to them because I'm absolutely petrified of Scottie or Rory just annihilating this field. but it doesn't going to stop me from betting. So Finau and Minwoo, 33-40 at the top. Kevin Yu, 70-1, 8 places. All of these are with the 8 placement points. So a top 8 to go along with the outright bet. Davis Riley, like the rest of the world, 75-1 with 8 places. Nikolai Højgaard, because I just can't stop being hurt by him, 80-1 with 8 places. Then I got 5 bombs. I'm taking a shot down the list. We've seen long shots do well at this tournament, not so much winning, but inside the top 10, populating that range. I got Victor Perez, 110-1, Stephen Fisk, 125-1, Ryan Fox, 150-1, Toasty, 175-1, and William Furr, almost like Aaron Burr from those old Got Milk commercials, but Aaron Furr, 800-1 with 8 places. I rolled that into first round leaders. Fisk, Toasty, and Fox, all with 5 places, 110-1. And Furr, who was tied for the first round lead a year ago at 300-1 with 5 places. Do you have interest in any of those guys, especially the long shots?
Some of the long shots will definitely make my DraftKings player pool. I'm not sure about the other stuff, but I do think you brought the voice back. And I'm not sure if you saw the qualifiers that got in, but your boy is back, not just for that voice, but yeah, you could play the Cootie got in. So one of the Cootie brothers.
Yeah, it was Pearson Cootie ended up getting into the field. You did.
Who was it?
Pearson Cootie. No one has, and if people are new, no one has that name unless you're exceptionally wealthy growing up. It's impossible not to have a ton of money with the name Pearson Cootie.
And McClure Meisner's in the field as well.
That's Mark Messier, though. He actually had a good week last week.
Yeah, I like it.
So that's what we're doing for the bets. Taking a look at it, I actually made the first round leader bets before I kind of mapped out the AM tee time, so I have no idea if those guys are in the AM. Fox is in the AM. Fisk is in the afternoon. Toasty is in the morning, and William Hur is in the afternoon. I think he's the last tee time out on the course. So it's split either way. So I'm playing both sides of the first round leader market as well. One and done. You were not here last week, and I believe I took Sam Burns as the main. No, did I take Corey Connors or did I take Sam Burns? Now I can't even remember. I split between them. Sam Burns was a terrible play. He missed the cut. But I was right. No one used him, probably for good reason. For the show team last week, now in 917th place, I used Corey Connors last week on that team. I used Sam Burns on my main team. I got dropped from 25th down to 33rd in that. So I'm still 33rd in the giant one and done. What are you feeling this week? Because obviously we're not burning. Even if you have Scottie or Rory, you're not using Scottie or Rory. But I do feel like everyone else is probably pretty live to use. And I would guess that Minwoo, Finau, or Rai would be the most popular selections amongst everyone.
Yeah, you read my mind. That's definitely going to be the 3. Dad's on Minwoo. He texted me this morning, so that tells us what we need to know there. Ryan, and I don't know, do you think Spawn will get any love too if people don't want to play him anywhere else, but they'll just say, why not play him in one and done? Maybe that's the case.
I've actually used him already, apparently, on this team. I used him at the Cognizant when he came in second. That was great news. That's what I was trying to.
Good usage.
That's what I was trying to regroup on the team and try to get it back up the standing. So it did work a little bit that way. I bet Finau and Minwoo outright, so I got that if it comes through. I would prefer Finau over Minwoo, but either way, Spawn might not actually be a terrible look here because I don't think that people are going to use him. But even going down a little bit farther, like Cust used Jacob Bridgman this week, you could roll the dice on almost like it worked out with Victor last week, where you have one of these players. Now, Victor's an exception because he just won the FedEx Cup a year and a half ago. He was a top 3 player in the world. He was a top 3 player at majors in terms of the betting odds. And then he drops down to 80-1 at a Gooper tournament and he ends up winning. Now, these guys aren't in the same category, but I keep circling Sahith, being like, he's better than basically all of these guys. He's just not playing well. Do you just take a chance on him knowing that the only other time that you're going to use Sahith this year is if he starts reeling off top 10 finishes, then you feel comfortable with him at a place that's not a signature event that he's playing, and then everyone in the world is using him. Could you try to get ahead of it here, roll the dice on him or Wyndham Clark, I suppose?
I kind of like Wyndham for that reason. And I don't know what's your I mean, you know more about the stuff that I do, following it heavily. I'm following the game theory of it all and that sort of thing. But I guess if it does rain like it's going to, as heavy as it is, and keeping the ball in the fairway, I feel like for whatever reason, at least with Theegala, that's not as ideal, but maybe with Wyndham, we could roll him out there. What do you think?
I'm not too concerned about guys hitting the fairway. Some of these fairways are 40 yards wide. It is an absolute grip and rip type course. And even if you miss the fairway, it's all dormant Bermuda. It's not like grown up graduated rough. So unless you're hitting it out of bounds, it's not that big of a deal. I guess your ball could get muddy and you can't lift, clean, and replace it as you would during the fairway. I understand that point of it, but I don't think it's as penal at this course than it would be at some. And even on approach shots, let's say you're in the rough and you do get a little bit of mud on your ball. All of the areas around the green are shaved and runoff areas. So you can lift, clean, and replace for your chips from there, even if you do have mud on the ball. Obviously, your approach play will be a little bit worse, but it should improve your around the green game at the same time. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay. Yeah, I still would side Wyndham. So if you want to roll Wyndham, I'd be happy with him here.
All right, well, we'll roll Wyndham out for that team, and I'll try to figure out what I'm doing with the other one. Hopefully, we can get a win out of him and move on up to like 500th place after this. But it turns out, based on my standings being in 33rd place, the only tournaments you need to do well are the signature events and the majors.
Yeah, that's right. And here, you can't say Wyndham without win. So we'll take it and give it a shot.
I bet him at this tournament last year. I just feel like he could not make a putt to save his life, but his ball striking was off the charts good. Ditto with Finau, honestly. Underdog wise, I think I'm going to try to, put into practice what I was preaching a little bit and try to go for some scores a little bit earlier on in the day. Yeah, do you like that angle of it? And you can and listen, I don't want to be sitting here with a round one underdog entry that I have to wait like 2 days to see if it cashes, if there ends up being inclement weather in delay. I'd rather just lose that and get back into the afternoon if that's the way that it's going to be. So I want to target some of these AMT times. Do you think Rory starts out hot?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. And I think to your point, you said that's the other nice thing about Underdog, right? Is you're not waiting around for losers or winners because it's going to be out of the way early on, and then you should be good to go. So I expect it to be a good spot to target. And even if the afternoon ends up working out because it gets pushed or something like that, doesn't really matter because you're playing against whatever the number is, right? The target number or strokes or whatever it might be. So yeah, I'm good with going with that strategy, and I'd be fine using Rory.
Shout out to everyone who helped fill the Pat Mayo Open on Underdog major season draft. It filled immediately. There are no seats left in that anymore at the $25 entry. However, you have the Albatross and you have the restart scramble as well. Both of those start at the Masters. I have my cheat sheet available. It's pinned to my Twitter profile. It's also available in the newsletter as a write-up, and I did a video on it this weekend about guys that you should target for the majors and some of the strategy behind those drafts. There's like $50K to first prize in some of these, and if you use code Mayo, you will get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000 and a free pick for the Pick'em game as well. Let's go. Why don't we just do it? Let's go lower, 69 strokes on Minwoo first round. He's in morning tee time. We can go, there's not very many morning tee times, is there?
That's another thing I was going to tell you. It's for DraftKings later, but just for now. But when the pricing happens later, there's only 3 guys that have a morning tee time above average price point, 8,400 and up.
Yeah, it's Rory, Minwoo, and who? Matt McNeely?
Wyndham Clark.
Wyndham Clark is the other one. You just want to roll those 3 guys out and hope they do well?
Yeah, Mav's right there when we get to DraftKings later. But yeah, Mav also does a morning tee time. But those 3 is the way to go and just see what happens. Yeah, it's a good way to use them for that manner.
So let's do that. And we'll just hope they have exceptional rounds. So we'll go lower, lower, lower. Oh, that's not even really helping us out all that much now, is it? Let's take Rory off of it. Really? Oh, man, everyone's really at the correlated lower side of this. So
what about Thigala? Thigala on there?
Thigala is on that side of it. Like, do you like Thigala this week?
I think it's another way to target him, though, right? Like, I think you just get him coming out of the gates hot. If it's good Thigala, we're in good shape. If it's bad Thigala, move on. Like you said, don't have to look at it the next day.
All right, so let's do it this way. Let's do a 2-banger to start things off. Tread lightly on the Underdog circuit. We'll go Minwoo Lee lower than 69 strokes. Sahith Thigala lower than 69 strokes. I was absent from Underdog last week because I was in North Carolina. Didn't want to play the Champions game, and I was golfing a ton myself, so I had no time to do research. We cleaned up at the Players. Believe I ended up like 16 units between the 8 entries that I gave out on Underdog on my Twitter account. And that's where I do them during the week. So we'll do that. That's the official play of the show. Minwoo lower, 69 strokes. Sahith Thigala lower than 69 strokes, both from that AM wave. Hopefully they can do something for us. I'll dump that link into the chat right now and go through it. So yeah, I think that's the way that I want to play it. And getting those drafts. I know you don't do many of the drafts. I really enjoy doing them.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I always tell people the same way. It's not that I don't enjoy them or want to do them. It's more of just what I always call the balancing plates act, right? You got all the spinning plates, and if you drop one, it can drop others, and then you do got to go back and pick up all the pieces, and it can affect mindset, play, things like that. You mentioned like your 3KQ. You didn't play it because your sort of mindset was you weren't fully into that strategy, so you'll wait for a time when you feel best to do it. That's kind of how I treat these types of things as well.
All right. Well, we'll talk a bit more strategy on DraftKings, the lineups, the AM, PM stacks, maybe build through those. Plus, we're going to get to your questions just after this. Have you noticed how Pat Mayo seems a whole lot better rested recently? It's no secret. I got my old mattress, took it outside, threw it in the trash the moment my Helix mattress showed up. My wife and I took the quiz on helixsleep.com. We went through everything and we decided the firmness. We wanted the temperature, how we actually sleep. And all of a sudden, the mattress shows up, we lay down, and I'm not having a lot of the sleep problems that I've been having in the past. I just wake up 50 times a night. Not no more with my Helix mattress. I was sleeping on my side with my head underneath my pillow, and I was getting chicken wing for when I woke up, and my back and my shoulders were sore because there was a divot inside my old mattress where I've been sleeping on it so long. Now, all of that has gone. It's been such an upgrade with my Helix mattress that I'm getting full sleep, and even my Apple Watch is telling me that I'm getting a far more full sleep this time. I'm not hitting 54% on my sleep cycle anymore. Now I'm up at like 90%, even 100% some nights. So hopefully this can help you out as well. And you can go to helixsleep.com/PatMayo for the March Madness sale, which is 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/PatMayo for 20% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/PatMayo. Welcome back. We're talking DraftKings with Tambo for the Houston Open. So let's talk about those weather splits and let's talk about the AM. Put it this way. I don't think it's necessary that you split your teams up, but I'm going to do it anyway just to create some differentiation. The issue, as you pointed out with the AM stacks, is it's the same three guys at the top for everyone.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. So I want to bring that up to you because it is interesting. It's like, okay, you go Rory, Minwoo, you got 7,100. Now, the good news is you can get different enough with it. They did throw 43 guys into the 7K range this week. And then there's a ton of guys. I still think, I know not everybody agrees, but I still think there's a ton of guys in sort of the upper 6K where you could make a case. I mean, you bet some of them. I mean, you're usually on this track with me as well of guys like Stephen Fisk, for example. Like I could see clicking him in and not being like that afraid. I'm going to play him. Justin Lauer, Matt Wallace, Ryan Fox. They're technically 7K guys that just got thrown in at 68 to 6,900. Your boy Kevin Roy, he's right there as well. But looking at wave splits, I didn't see if they were AM PM yet, but when you go Rory Minwoo, there's enough options to get different elsewhere. It just becomes very similar to last week, Pat, where when people went Fleetwood Straka. Well, obviously that was the most popular start that you could do within the AM PM wave. And that's where you got to be willing to get different and go from there.
Yeah. And last week, my strategy was just full fade on Fleetwood. So I think most of my team started Straka Lowry, and I was able to build a more the opposite wave that I ended up going through. So I faded JT, which left me with who the hell would have been? Now I can't even remember. It was Burns and someone, but all my best lineups were the one outlier guy. And then it was like Thomas, Connors, and like that 9K upper 8K. That's how most of my teams ended up going. But I full faded Vic and used Ben Ann for $100 more at that same price point, which was really it wasn't the turning point of my week. I had a really good week, but if I had just used Victor in that spot, I would have won way more money. Or if Bridgman just hits that putt.
Yeah, that too. It's so crazy when you think back to stuff like, a lot of the conversation last week. My for sure one was with Tommy of like Tommy is so expensive and he never wins on the PGA Tour. I get it. He's safe, but like your example there, Benny Ann, good wave, made sense for it. So I get that. He was in the better wave. Him and Adam Scott were 82 and 8,300, if I recall correctly. But it's like then you could play Benny Ann or Victor Hovland at the same price, basically. And now hindsight's 2020, of course, but it's crazy when you think about things that way sometimes.
So if we're going to build up this AM side from the bottom, there are a few names that I do like. I'm okay with going back to Danny Walker after he missed last week. Toasties at 67. I really like him. And then you have Kevin Roy, Sexy Roy, right at 6,800, who you mentioned already. Ryan Fox at 6,900. They're all a part of this AM wave. So that's probably the bottom I would try to play it. The issue is I'm finding too few people that I actually like from this side of the wave to make it worth my while to build. If I end up building 20 lineups, they're all going to be Rory, Minwoo, Rory, Wyndham, Clark lineups. Because after those three, you have Rory, Minwoo, and Wyndham Clark. The next guy that you can kind of use is Mav McNeely, who's all the way down at 83. And then you have McNeely, Grazerman, Thigala, Ben Griffin, Taylor Moore, Harris English, Jake Knapp, Kurt Kitayama. What week is it going to be, Tambo, when the optimizers stop telling you to play Kurt Kitayama?
That I don't know. It just continues to be a constant, right? I feel like what was it? I got it up here somewhere. I'll find it in a second.
He has no finishes above T33 so far in 2025.
And that was 2 weeks ago. And I was gonna say that was the week it looked. So was that the same week that Keith Mitchell also showed signs of life for a little bit until he didn't? Those are two guys that optimizers always love, that always pop in there. And no, it wasn't. I think Mitchell was last week where he started out first round. But yeah, these guys never really have crazy. I guess Mitchell has had some 25ths and stuff like that, but these guys have not been doing much, yet they always get plopped in through the optimizer. And yeah, Kitayama still gets shown. That's for sure.
This reminds me, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but there was a guy named Anders Albertson who gained 12 strokes on approach at Sanderson Farms to kick off the swing season. It was one of the swing season events. And that one performance over those 4 rounds stuck with him in modeling and optimizers, whatever it was, for a good 8 weeks into the new season. And he just wasn't good. He had one good tournament and it carried him. And I do think that some of the swing season stuff for Kitayama is finally out. Like, he had a heater month run in the swing season at easy courses against goober fields, and it didn't match up. It would be better if we could figure out some way to contextualize this thing, and maybe there's a better way to do that. Like, sometimes you just have to look at it yourself and be like, "No, that's wrong." Like, maybe he comes through, maybe he doesn't, but he beat up on the types of fields that he's not playing now. He essentially won on the Korn Ferry Tour or played well on the Korn Ferry Tour, but now he has to play against good players and it's just not working out.
Yeah, that's really what it looks like. So I was going to say one thing that's interesting though about like the Rory Scottie thing is a bigger conversation. I know we're sticking with AM right here, but just the Rory factor. What do you think about a lineup that just starts with like just Wyndham and then jumps down, or sorry, Minwoo Wyndham and then jumps down, and you end up staying in the higher 7Ks if you want, or you can build it out with an 8K guy in there, whatever. You don't have to punt as much. You know you're never going to make up the win equity of Rory and Scottie at the top. It's like 20 to 30% of the win equity, but I'm just saying you're getting a more, I don't know, a make the cut type lineup with upside, with guys that you think could upset this place and win, for example. So Minwoo, Wyndham, and then something like, I don't know, McGreevy, whoever else you like in there, McNeely, whatever you want to put in.
I was going to say Grazerman, Thigala. What do we have? What do we have left? 7,600. We could go Toasty. Love Toasty this week. You guys definitely missing the cut. And that gets us back up to McNeely if we want him. You go Minwoo, Clark, Grazerman, Thigala, McNeely, and Toasty.
Yeah, and who? Oh, because you didn't play McGreevy. Did you play McGreevy?
No, I didn't play McGreevy. I played McNeely.
Gotcha. You played Toasty instead. So let's see that. Yeah. So Toasty, and then it gets you back up to McNeely. Yeah, something like that. Again, not going to project the best, but it's got a bunch of lower owned pieces. It's a completely different build, and it's a way to get different when you got 2 9s, 3 8s, and a 6. No 7Ks and nobody in the 11Ks, and there is no 10K range or 5K this week. So just an interesting way to do it if you think you can fend off those guys at the top. Obviously, a lot of Rory Minwoo or Rory Clark would be more popular here because you have the money to do it, and people just don't want to play as many. I think 8K guys are getting popped in like 1 or 2 at most. This has 3, so I already see this is a way to get different for sure.
So we could probably throw Fox into that as well as we scan to this lower area. Vic Perez is afternoon. I like him. Ricky Castillo is out in the morning. No mention of, have you heard anyone talk about Austin Eckroat yet this week?
Not enough, probably. Like not enough that it's going to matter or anything like that. But I have seen him pop up in a couple places, but nothing crazy. So yeah, he's fine.
I just thought he was interesting going out. Like Johnny Vegas still, based on his performance at the Century, when you look at it, and maybe he still is the type of player that you do want to take periodic shots on because he pops every other week in terms of approach play. We know that he is very familiar with these Texas greens, but his putting has just been so bad so far this season that you hope that he can turn it around. Doesn't have a finish inside the top 40, except for the opening event at Century when he gained 10 strokes on approach and came 4th. So maybe he's not the right guy to go to in this sense. But I threw in McGreevy. I took out Minwoo and replaced him with Rory just to see if we can get a 2v2, but it ends up becoming a 3v3 when we really go through it. So I can throw Ryan Fox into this. I guess that makes the most sense. So we'll throw Ryan Fox in too, and you can fudge the lines wherever you want to, but it becomes Rory, Minwoo into Rory, and then you take, who do we have here?
You had Toasty in there at 67, right? So you left $200 on the table.
We still do. So McGreevy and Fox end up going into this lineup instead of McNeely and whoever else I had right with the Grazerman. So Grazerman, McNeely, and Minwoo become Rory, Fox, and McGreevy if you just 3v3 that lineup. And they're still all AM guys.
Yeah, and Thigala in there too. Like you got Rory, Clark, Thigala, McGreevy, Toasty, who you already like, and then Fox, who you like too. So I mean, that to me, it plays out fine. I guess I didn't really see what we were up against. Like, what do you see for like an optimal this week? I know we're doing AM PM right now, and we're gonna flip it after. But what, for getting that for 2 seconds, so we can compare projections just to see how far off we really are. What are you seeing for an optimal this week?
I mean, do you think here's the part that I can't quite wrap my mind around, I suppose. Do you think it's going to be Scottie, Rory, or both?
I think it's going to be pretty close. Oh, I don't think people are playing both together. No, that's one thing for certain. The way it shakes out this week, it's possible, but it only leaves 6,400. There's not enough names down there that people like. And honestly, you need like the perfect storm to happen. You need Scottie and Rory to steamroll everybody else and get the other four guys right down low. So you'd have to commit a lot of lineups to it, and you may not get there anyway, even if you do get some of the storm to happen you're in your favor.
I'm seeing more people using Rory than Scottie.
I agree on that. I was just saying you won't see a lot of them together in lineups, but overnight and just looking at it yesterday too, it looks like more will go to Rory just based on his recent play, and that $1,000 actually mattering here. It makes more sense.
I think that's really what it boils down to. I think if they were both the same price, people would play Scottie. That $1,000 difference amongst, I mean, Rory is objectively the best player in the world right now, at least so far in 2025. That it's kind of crazy that he's not the most expensive player in a weird way.
Yeah, I agree. That's sort of when I posted it out, I thought it was more interesting just from game theory that we, no 10K range, finally boosted these guys' price to match the betting board of 3-1, 6-1, and then a drop off to like 30-1. And then they did not use the 5K range to make it all work. So it's kind of interesting because the 6K range has real guys in it, like guys that you would know since there's no 5K to push them to. So I could see people wanting to make a case. But in this case, I like how they set it up with no 10K range at all. And that's what sort of set it up where Rory now just becomes more popular. A lot of people ended up complaining that he should be more than Scottie. So that just tells me I think a lot more people lean that way for multiple reasons.
Here's the issue. I don't know who's chalk down the board at all. I can't figure it out for the life of me. Matty Schmidt? People seem to like him.
So the bigger thing is more how the lineup starts, I think. So I talked about this yesterday, but with 43 guys in the 7K range and enough guys, let's call your handful of guys, 5 to 10 dudes that you're comfortable with in the upper 6K range, I don't think that matters as much beyond if you know somebody's going to get steamed to 15%, then yeah, it's probably crazy considering there's so many options around them. But the bigger thing is I think the Rory lineups start with a 9K guy. Like, I think it's going to be like Rory Rye, for example, because then you still have almost 7,200. Or maybe it's Rory Finau or something based on his history, and you have almost 7,300. It just really does seem that way versus the Scottie lineups pretty much need to drop to the 8K range to even get started.
So who do we think it is from the 6K range that ends up getting slotted in? Because people will punt somewhere. I think amongst all of us and people watching this show, be it the people who are just active on golf Twitter, golf DFS Twitter, whatever it might be. I do think that Stephen Fisk gets artificially boosted, but I don't think it's actually enough to concern you.
Yeah, and I actually think it could be your guy too, Toasty. Like Toasty is another guy that people seem really comfortable with. He obviously had a good result here last year, but I think it's going to be someone like that. But you can, again, to your point, you can just throw one in. None of them are going to be popular enough that you're like, oh my God, this guy got to 15%. I can't believe that. So you're fine there, but you just see how it makes it work. So we could leave Toasty into what you had earlier. Yeah, that's fine. What you got there.
So we
Davis Riley, good call. Yeah.
Rory, Rye, Davis Riley, Toasty. I think that lands you on Matty Schmidt and a $7,200 player. Victor Perez, maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. I guess the more you look at it, like, is that really going to be the build? That seems tricky.
It does, and it doesn't seem like it's going to come through. Maybe it ends up being not Matty Schmidt. Maybe it's actually my other guy, Ryan Fox, at 69. Then you're up to 7,300. And is there
Sam Stevens right there.
Sam Stevens is there?
Well, but that's who people like from my early stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely
So
a guy that just pops really heavy in projections. So I think people are comfortable with that.
He hasn't been having a good... I feel like Sam Stevens has not been having a good go of it lately.
No, he's just going to be like a cheaper Kitayama, if you will, of like it just gets thrown in there. So I could see that. I guess the guys we skipped, maybe we have to do a bottom-up build, Pat, for this, is like if you just started in the low sevens and did like someone like him, I think Highsmith, Bridgman, those types of guys are going to be popular still, right? These are the guys that have been.
But Bridgman's 84.
Well, you can get to it. That's what I'm saying. You may not see as much of Rory Rye as you would think. Well, independently you'll see them. Will you see them together as often? Or again, when people just saw that lineup, I definitely don't think that's the chalk lineup.
No.
Of like Fox and Toasty and this. I think you could see Rory with Bridgman, for example. And then even if you put Stevens in, or if you put Fox in, whoever you think it is, one punt, you now are playing in the field of being able to get another 8K, multiple upper tier 7K guys. Like if you want McGreevy, or who else is popping here? Nick Taylor, Davis Riley. We got to get Davis Riley into it. So that kind of feels more like where people are landing, right? Something like that.
So what if it's Rory Finau? Then you actually have a bit of savings. You have $700 worth of savings off of Rye, and you can still throw Toasty and you can get Davis Riley, and then you can split the difference at 7,400. What you just talked about, you could go McGreevy. I think that Nikolai Højgaard will probably be relatively owned because suckers like me love to play this dude every week.
Yeah, I agree. So we could use it. Who would it be? Him and McGreevy?
Him and McGreevy. So you go Rory, Finau, Toasty at the bottom, Riley, McGreevy, Højgaard. I think a lineup like that is what you'll see. If not, you'll see it with, so we can play that one and then we'll re-bring it back up. And the only other out on this is you get rid of Finau and you get rid of, let's say, Nikolai, and then you have 8,300. So your lineup would look like almost like what you just said. It'd be Bridgman and Smalley would be exactly who it is.
That's the lineup right there. That it's closer to it. So let me get rid of McGreevy. Who did I miss? You said Bridgman, Smalley.
I got rid of Højgaard and someone.
I think I got it here anyway. I'm just going to finalize so I can get the projection. But yeah, I got it. And I was going to say and it projects the best of all of them. That's what we were looking for. And whoever, pick your poison at 6,700. We went with Toasty. I actually think that's probably who it is, but maybe some people pick a Danny Walker or something along those lines. I am curious now, though, that we did this. What did we go with? Smalley, McGreevy. Oh, this has Rory in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's the other babies? Morning. I was seeing if there was already like a natural split on tee times, but yeah, this is the lineup here, Pat. Whoever people pick at 6,700 is up to them, but I think you can't go without Rory and Riley in this building a chalk type lineup. I think people really like Bridgman, Smalley, McGreevy, and what happens if you take out Toasty and McGreevy? What else can you get for 7K? It's like Ryan Fox and somebody else, or Steven Fisk. And
I mean, you don't have to sell me on Steven Fisk. So let's get rid of Toasty and McGreevy. You have 7,000 left in order to do this. So it would be Ryan Fox and $7,200. Eckroat, Hostler, Hisatune is sitting there. I like Victor Perez the best of those guys. I'm sure people will love Rico Hoey because people love him every week. Olesen is right there at $7,000 if you're thinking about scrambling. That's usually where he does his best work. I'm just kind of out on him so far this season. I've moved on to
screaming Olesen at you.
Oh, great. I mean, if the chat is screaming, I'm sure it's wrong. Unless he lives on the course, that tends to be wrong. So instead, the 2v2 would become Toasty and McGreevy into Fox and Perez for me.
I think that's what it would be. And actually that projects even better than what we just had. So that's the best version of it so far.
You can play Jake Paul at $7,000 if you want. I don't know if that's you can play the Jeremy Paul.
Yeah, Jeremy Paul.
Like, there's a lot of guys from down here. Like the skill set, like, is there any particular skill set that you like to target this week that you think pops up for this course? I do think that there is a pretty good through line of guys that you would want. Like, if you've seen Taylor Moore play well here, that's why I went with Min Woo, because I think you can get away with hitting bad irons if you have a good enough short game and make your putts. Like driver, short game, putting. irons are a plus, but the other stuff means more.
Okay, I'm clearing this now to go to this skill set lineup. Minwoo, you said, and then you said Taylor Moore.
Taylor Moore would be involved in that, like guys who drive well and can't hit their irons.
You probably got it on Fantasy National there, but what other guys come to mind when it comes to this? I'm just curious to see what that shakes out.
Well, weirdly, the guy that ends up like really good in all of these, he rates out number 1 in my model. Andy's coming on the show next week and needs a top 50 finish to get into the Masters this week. Is Michael Kim actually fits this perfectly.
This guy, so the other thing about him too, we got to play Michael Kim this week because he basically said in 3 different ways his postings this week that he sucks. Yeah, he's there's no way he does well this week, right? Is basically what it came out to. And so, of course, got to have him in the lineups this week. It's going to be another good Michael Kim week. You can already tell.
Davis Thompson fits this build really well based on what he does.
And then we need some cheaper versions of these guys.
Let's see. The cheaper version. Well, there's Taylor Moore. He's a cheap version. Toasty is Toasty's the optimal version of this player. He's 6th in driving distance. He's 20th around the green. He's great on lawn proximity and plays the hard long par 4s really well.
Okay. And then to round it out, nice little pivot here off of Joe Highsmith. Would you go with you, Knapp, or Riley? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I bet Kevin Yu to win because if he putts this week, it's going to work, but he doesn't fit this build because he doesn't putt. Like, you need someone who can make a few putts. I know Toasty kind of sucks at putting too, but I'm just thinking about around the green. Maybe Yu does actually fit it. Let me just see who else pops in. Celinda does really well in this. Kitayama does really well in this. Ryan Fox is another one. Hayden Springer is another one. Ricky Castillo is another one that fits these through lines, and so does Steven Fisk.
So Kitayama fits the build and leaves $100 on the table if you went that way.
I'd rather play Kevin Yu, in full honesty. But what do you think?
He fits it perfect, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think that Kitayama's ownership gets up to this week? Are people just done playing him, or will they continue to go back because the computer tells them to?
The computer is definitely still telling them to, but it just depends on what people are clicking. I will say the one thing is there's a ton of options above and below that I think people feel more comfortable with this week. And when you have McGreevy, Stevens, Novak, some Seamus Power lovers out there. There's Kevin Yu, who you talked about, Joe Highsmith, Taylor Moore, Ben Griffin. There's just a lot of guys there. So maybe it's finally a week that people don't go to him, and he definitely fits the build that you just talked about.
Well,
does Kevin Yu.
Let me just look up Patrick Rogers for a second. 70th in driving distance, 34th around the green, 110th on approach, makes his putts. See how that rates out against Kurt Kitayama. 21st in driving distance, 33rd around the green. But if we shrink the sample to 12 rounds instead of 24 rounds, he becomes absolutely abysmal. Let's roll out some Patrick Rogers in this and see how that works instead of Kitayama and leave $100 on the table. I think that this lineup works a little bit better for an absolute skill stack. There is one player that we didn't include in this who fits this perfectly, and his name is Rory.
Yeah, well, then you can just swap it. That's the nice thing. You got the build. You already saved it, right? Would you get rid of Minwoo or Davis Thompson?
Well, I feel like Minwoo is going to be more popular than Davis Thompson, so we'll just get rid of Minwoo. But then we have to get rid of who? Michael Kim at the same time? We have to save 2,000 somewhere.
We're going to be all in Toasty by the end of this thing. It's going to be great.
Well, we already have Toasty in this lineup.
No, I know. I'm saying we can't take him out anyway because he's not going to help us here. So I just meant we're going to continue to build lineups that include him. We can always see about swaps there, but maybe it's taking out both. Well, okay, let's do it. This is where I would do the 2v2 then. I would take out Davis Thompson and it's Rory 7,400, or it's Rory and you take out Michael Kim and you go down to $6,700 with 2 punts. And I don't think we had as many good options down there. So to me, it's probably take out Davis Thompson, leave your boy Michael Kim for the good mojo coming on the show next week. And we said, he's obviously going to play well. And then you land on, you can do McGreevy, Fowler, Hogard, Nico. You can do Ryder, Hodges, Novak, anything. What were the guys that you listed 74 to 7,300 that you liked?
Yeah, those guys are in there, but we're still trying to stick with the skill stack lean that we want to try out here. So there are 2 guys that theoretically fit the mold that we're talking about who are down in this. Let's see,
okay.
Is there anyone else? No. Doesn't seem to be, with enough driving distance and around the green game. So the 2 names are Luke List at $6,500 who I've actually bet to win this tournament and had this tournament won, and he gagged it away at the end because he's Luke List. That was years ago at this point. And the other one was, where the hell did he go? Now I can't find it for the life of me. It's not Zach Johnson, I'll tell you that much. Luke List and CT Pan doesn't have enough driving distance for this. Danny Walker actually fits it perfectly.
So you just put Danny Walker and call it a day?
Yeah.
Still projects pretty good too. Out of curiosity, who fits it out of Fisk and Fox?
What's that, sorry?
Who fits it between Fisk and Fox?
Better?
Double F's there. It's who fits the mold better?
I believe Fox does because he's actually quite good around the greens, where Fisk is fine. I mean, they both rate out pretty similarly, honestly. But I know for a fact that after watching Steven Fisk putt to come down the stretch at Puerto Rico, dude is basically Luke List. He was just missing 3-foot putts on easy greens.
So don't put him and Luke List together. Play Luke List and Fox, and then you can get away with moving off Toasty in one of these.
If you wanted to, but yeah, if you could go up a little bit, but I'm good with this lineup and just continue to roll out Toasty. Over leveraged on Toasty. That's where you want to be this week.
You going to tell Michael Kim that you bailed on him just because of his post on X?
I didn't. No, we didn't. I already played the lineup that we just had. Oh, good. Now it's checking my location. I'm in.
One lineup is all you're going to give your boy. Wow.
No, he's definitely going to be a part of my PM stacks as well. Okay. But let's see if we can cobble together a Scheffler Rory lineup.
The chat did say that, interesting. We always tout Min Woo, but for that price, the man has never won and has no T10s this year. But someone like Fleetwood has T10s, never wins, has a higher fantasy points, and we shit on him.
But Fleetwood was also the betting favorite last week. Min Woo was still 40-1, which I bet him at. He wasn't 12-1.
Yeah, I'm with you. Also, what was the thing I was going to say? There was what I was just thinking of. I don't know. He was up there in like a U.S. Open. He's had some other good results too. The Players, stuff like that. So Min Woo's come through for us, but at this price, it does make it a little tricky for sure. And you can always skip that. To round out the AM/PM conversation, it's actually a good point, Pat. Is you don't have to max it out that way. You don't have to go Rory Min Woo or Rory Wyndham Clark. You can jump down, as we just showed you, or you could build your best Rory Min Woo lineup and be like, I'm not going to play Min Woo. I'm going to drop him down to Matt McNeely because I think he's going to beat him, and just leave that money or upgrade something down the board. But just saying in general, you could definitely leave money on an AM/PM 6-0 stack like that, because it doesn't really matter as much anymore. You're playing for the wave, not necessarily the talent level that DraftKings tells you is baked in based on price. It's not true always.
So if you play Scheffler and Rory, you end up with a team consisting of Will Gordon, Nick Hardy, Luke List, and the punter, Patton Kazire, if you wanted to. Hell, I'll throw Thirsty Lawrence into there, although he has been absolutely god-awful so far this year on the PGA Tour. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see many of these lineups.
The only reason to do it, that's how you would do it, though. To your point, Pat, you just said it. Get your boy Thirsty in there, and Luke List, your boy. Like, if you're playing that lineup, you can just put it in with the plays you like the most, or your dudes, or whatever you want to do, and that way you can't be mad. If it hits and all your guys hit, you hit your parlay. If it doesn't hit, you don't have to invest, 20, 30, 40% of your lineups getting involved with, this type of stack setup to hope to land on the perfect scenario in more ways than one. You need Scottie and Rory to come through. You need the 9Ks to basically be abysmal. Like, you need them to not do anything. And then you need to land on the exact 6K guys that make the cut and probably do something as well, because the balance builds, could be made cuts with a few guys up there from the 8K range. So it's just really tricky and not even worth the time, to be honest.
Okay, so here's what you can do instead, because I forgot about Wilson Fur down at the bottom. I bet him to win. I might as well use him at $6,100 in this lineup. So Scheffler, Rory, Will Gordon, Luke List, Wilson Fur, and then Toasty fits it in there.
God. So it's the same, but, still bad.
Yes. Well, but great.
It actually got worse. Yeah, it got worse.
But but I guarantee you it's not giving last year's first-round leader, Wilson Fur, any sort of credit whatsoever.
Wilson Fur, round leader? Is that what you're saying?
I did bet him as first-round leader, yes.
Yeah, it's built right into the name, man. He's like getting close, but not quite there. It's not for Wilson first. It's Wilson Fur. So it's very close, and hopefully it comes true for you. But yeah, I won't be betting it. I won't be getting him too heavily involved in old Wilson this week. But yeah, I think it just shows these builds are extremely tricky and probably not worth your time.
So let's start with Scheffler and see how that goes. Because I can see myself just going this path, that he might just come second. He'll end up being worth the price.
Yeah, let's get right out of the gate. Let's get Celinda in there for sure.
Celinda.
Schmid and Celinda.
I was going to say
Celinda and Schmid.
Davis Riley as well.
No, that's how you screw it all up. You play the Chalk Riley.
Okay, so
After
Scheffler, Celinda, Schmidt. And you have $7,700.
Yeah, who are the guys? Is there anybody in the 8K range that you like Smalley, Mitchell, Bridgman, Dietrich? Dietrich might be interesting here, by the way. Michael Kim is our boy we talked about.
Yeah, Michael Kim is there. I mean, do we just roll out Jaeger, who won this tournament last year and seemingly has no interest? I'll try to let me look up ownership on these guys for a second, just to see who is actually popping up of these guys. I doubt it's many, because if you start with Rory, like Rory and Scottie are carrying so much ownership that we just kind of saw that if you use Scottie, even like an 8K guy starts making your lineup look a bit squirrely.
Yeah, the 8K guys will pop up individual. Like they'll have ownership for sure, but it's because a Scottie lineup needs an 8K guy to make it work. A Rory lineup gets 8K guys in there, as we just saw. You can put two of them, so they'll hover in that 15% range. Some of them, 12 to 15%, somewhere around there. But you could get like Jaeger at 10% or something. You could get Dietrich at 5 or 6%. I think that's how I'm seeing it, at least right now. They're definitely going to get put into lineups more than 9K guys.
I have all of these 8K guys essentially being right around 10%, which means that there's going to be one guy that pops. Smalley probably pops up to 17%, and two of the guys drop down to 6 or 7%.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out with the Scottie Rory stuff. But yeah, I've got a lot of them in double digits at least, if not that 10 to 15 range.
Yeah, I don't have Grazerman that high. Like of the 8K guys, I guess this is not right at 9K. Jason Day isn't showing like anything at all. Wyndham Clark isn't showing anything. No one's really using Sung Jae or JJ Spawn either. And it's not like Aaron Rye is going to be 24% owned, but he's going to be way more owned than those guys.
Yeah, agreed. That all sounds correct, and what I'm seeing somewhat the same. So Finau could pop a little bit based on what we talked about earlier, where it kind of works a little better. If you go to him, that could lean to guys like Michael Kim or Bridgman for sure. People are following Bridgman's work right now. Been playing really well, but he played well in the Florida swing. We'll see if it translates over to here with all the ownership coming with him. But yeah, I think there's some interest in this range, but it's all kept in check. Kind of what you're pointing out.
Yeah, it leaves you, if we go Scheffler, Celinda, Grazerman, Matty Schmidt, you have $7,600 left. So we could go another 8K guy, low sevens, or just pick off two of these guys in the middle. Obviously, the inclination would be to go to Davis Riley, but I think that we said we're not doing that in the Scheffler lineups.
In this one, at least. I mean, if you go to Riley just to round that one out, you're on Riley and who? There's got to be someone else right there. Is it Rogers?
Rogers or Seamus Power right below, who I feel like had a really good week last week.
It was a good week for sure.
No one's using them.
Yeah, so that's just a prime example. Who is in that wave just above him? I'm just trying to see. You. Let me look at this actually. See how this one projects. If you go it uses all the salary, and this is a great projection too. But if you go
Nick Taylor,
I went Power.
I'd rather have Nick Taylor. Give me some win equity down there.
Yeah, Canadian bias. Okay, yeah, let's do that.
I mean, we went through it on yesterday's show. Nick Taylor is 4th in PGA Tour wins over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I've been preaching it forever. It's all the weeks where I said it last week when Fleetwood was, we didn't have our show together, but last week when he beat Fleetwood in the playoff and won a lot more than Fleetwood, and it's legit sample size over last couple of years. And was way cheaper last week. And I know it's not the same, but just to say it, like that's kind of how I look at things sometimes. Did not work out. And it was 2 weeks ago, I think it was what we were looking at. But yeah, we've talked about that in the past. I'm fine with Nick Taylor. It doesn't really matter about his history here or anything.
Yeah. So let's build. So that's the types of Scottie lineups that you're going to see. I guess the adjustment you could make to this is take that Schmidt, Celinda, and just drop those down to Fox, Wilson Fur, wherever just 2 6K guys. And then you can upgrade wherever else that you wanted to do it. So let's try the non-Scottie, non-Rory lineups. Like, what do those look like this week? If you have JJ Spawn, pretend those two guys don't exist. Full fade on those guys. How do you then build out a lineup, do you think?
It probably starts with Rye.
Like Rye, Minwoo, Finau?
At least Rye Finau, because then you have almost 7,800 left and you can do whatever you want. But don't you think, I guess it's up to you, like what you think on this and others out there, but I would say my takeaway is that if someone's building this like a single entry and they're like, okay, or whatever they're deciding, right? I'm going to fade these guys. Then the point would be to not have to go to the toasties, all that. We can make versions of this that pop because you get a toasty or something like that in there. But I think someone looking at a rye Finau is looking to fill it out, much like what I now see on your screen.
So I went Rye Finau. If you have questions in the chat about this week, load them in right now, and then Tambo and I can get to them right after we finish building these lineups. But Rye Finau, Grazerman, Taylor Moore at 79, Riley at 76, and then pick your poison at 74. I went with Højgaard. You could go with McGreevy. Echeverria is right there. Maybe you like Sam Ryder, one of the 72s or 73s a little bit more. Lee Hodges is somewhat interesting because he had been playing so well before his injury, but he hasn't played in ages. He hasn't played since, the hell has he played? Phoenix.
Yeah. That's I mean, what you had up was exactly what I was describing. So we're aligned there. I think that does hold true for the most part. Like if you go down to Toasty, you get to bring, let's say you took more down to Toasty and you pick up $1,200, then Højgaard can obviously be somebody that you like up in the 8K range. But I don't think people are going to be as inclined to build like that. I think when they're building this way, it's to get away from this type of build. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't hate, honestly, going Rye, Finau, Dietrich, Grazerman, then Riley and Toasty. I mean, you can make Riley and Toasty whoever you want, but the 2 9s, the 2 8s, no one's really using Dietrich. Second place last year, coming off a decent week. Maybe he can get it back together a little bit. That he is still upside wise one of the better players in this field, even though he doesn't quite flash those skills all that often. He's kind of like Min Woo in a weird way, but he actually has a win on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, so I like that. I saved that lineup. What you just said though was something I was gonna hit on with you, and it's not like a new segment. I just thought it was something interesting to discuss. And sometimes we'll mess around at some majors, and when they're softer priced, and be like, who are the 6 guys that nobody's playing, that like the Victor Hovland effect from last week? It's just like he's too cheap. We already established it's probably Thigala, Nick Taylor, guys like that. But just in general, Pat, like there's some ranges here that are interesting. And Dietrich, the guy you just brought up, shows up last week with a 22nd. I forget didn't he win a tournament overseas or something recently?
No.
No. 2 months ago or something?
He won in Phoenix, but he's never won a tournament overseas.
Or maybe that's what it was. Opposite. I'm thinking he won. And so just my point being, I guess he's one example. So Dietrich, second here last year, 22nd, has stat profile. He can pop at his price, all of that. Siwoo Kim, another guy.
And Jason Day would be another one who's just, he's won in Texas a bunch of times, and he's not playing poorly at the moment. It's just he's coming off being sick at the Players. So there are a few injuries to watch out for here. You have Lee Hodges. I don't know why he was out, but he's missed 2 months and now he's back. Victor Perez pulled out of the Players. He WD'd, but he showed up last week at Valspar and played pretty well. Wyndham Clark hasn't played since he withdrew at the Players. He even missed the TGL semifinal. Couldn't play with a neck injury, and obviously Jason Day's tummy issues, which didn't seem to be a problem 2 days later. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
Yeah. That's what I was saying, is I think there's patterns to be able to build that way, where it's like you can have guys like Jason Day, Siwoo, Dietrich, Smalley. Smalley was playing amazing and has played well here in the past, and he was just on the bad side of the weather last week and it didn't work out. So I think I look for targeting guys like that, putting them in my player pool, and then people are like, well, where'd they come from? Or they came out of nowhere. It's like Siwoo Kim is the best example. His finishes recently have been 21st, 12th, 24th, 19th, 38th. You and I both know, as some do out there, but don't deep dive it, but those are just a few strokes away either way, man. Like that, those could all be top 10s, and then everybody would be talking about him. He hasn't played bad. He just hasn't established enough top 10s. And then people just write it off completely. What if this is the week that happens? So I look for things like that. I think that's one of the angles that others aren't spending enough time on to figure it out. I definitely think Smalley fits the bill as well. 4th and 15th here, 2 of the last 3 years. Before the miscut last week in the weather, 14th, 18th, 10th, 21st, 11th. Like these guys fit, man. Highsmith is right there at 7,800. Some might play him, mind you, but just noting that. Grazerman, the one you brought up, 11th, 22nd, 24th, and 7th here last year. These guys all fit from that and aren't getting talked about enough.
So I went with the 4. I think that Smalley ends up the highest owned of the 8K guys. I think that people eventually just gravitate back towards him, where he has been a bit more consistent outside of last week. And when you look at Grazerman's numbers, they're a bit all over the board. But Grazerman was top 10 at this tournament last year, as a slew of much better finishes than Smalley. And I'd probably get him at half the ownership for a cheaper price. So that's the route that I went for this lineup. So to balance it out, it's 1 9K Jason Day right at 9K. Then you have Dietrich, Siwoo, Grazerman, Thigala, and I threw in Højgaard at $7,400. But Højgaard could be anyone.
Let me just see here before you take that down. I want to get that one. Who was the guy that you had?
I'm going to say Lee Hodges instead. I'll throw in Lee Hodges.
So, okay, let me do this for a second. Save this. Let me see what you've got there. So let me check the comparison and projection. So you've got Day, and then it drops down to Kim, Grazerman, Thigala, Dietrich. Kim, Grazerman, Dietrich, Grazerman, Thigala, and Kim. And then that leaves us with, you went with Hodges, I think. And Kim.
Yeah, it leaves $100 on the table.
Yeah, and if you didn't go with Hodges, you said you could play Højgaard, right?
Yeah. I'll play them both.
So, well, the only reason I'm looking at that now is because this is what I was trying to figure out. So Day, Dietrich, and then Kim for sure. And then you went to Grazerman.
And Thigala.
Oh, Thigala throws it off anyway. Okay, what I was going to say is we were pretty close to a full PM/AM stack, whether we wanted to or not. That's where sometimes I look at that stuff just to see, but it's off a little bit now anyway. But I do still like that lineup for sure. I think that's a good lineup there.
So how do we do that? We just take Thigala out and play who? Taylor Moore?
I think you go back to Smalley,
and
then you can get Highsmith with Højgaard. Yeah, that projects really well too. That's actually the one I think.
You got Highsmith?
$100 on the team. I got it down to Jason Day with Dietrich, Siwoo, and Smalley in the 8K range.
Yeah.
And then it lands you on Højgaard, who you liked and is in the afternoon, as well as you could go. Then it lands on Highsmith because Moore is in the morning. So
okay.
that's what I went. I just went with all afternoon guys.
So I went with Day, Siwoo, Dietrich, Grazerman, Smalley, and then Victor Perez at $7,100. They're all PM.
And Grazerman, I think, is the morning.
Oh, Grazerman's the morning. Oh, okay.
Grazerman's the morning. That's why you couldn't get to that one for this version of what I just was pointing out that sometimes when I'm looking at that stuff, if you're already going to go that way, you're trying to compound things, right? You're trying to say like, if this, then that. If you're already not playing Scottie and Rory, it means you're probably you're not going to make up the win equity. Well, what's a way to make up the made cut equity? You've got Day, Dietrich, Smalley, Siwoo, Højgaard. These are all good plays. Your worst guy is Highsmith by price. Again, doesn't matter as much about the price. It's just saying that's the point of this lineup. But then I'm looking for another thing is, well, what if all the Rory lineups get dusted because that ends up being a spot where the weather ends up kicking them in the ass and it's not that way? Well, now you put yourself another level up into that range. And so it's all just levels to it and looking at it in a different way, where if I'm going that way, I got no problem if you have a 5-1 or whatever else it might be. But if I can land on the 4 or on the 6-0, I'll look for it in some cases.
I ended up just swapping out Grazerman for Keith Mitchell just to make it work and leaving $200 on the table. But that's where I'll end up going with that lineup. Let's get to a few questions in the chat. I saw a few loading up there. So we might as well give the people what they want, answer their questions for you. Here we go. Can we discuss more single entry versus MME? Sounds like something for DFSmastermind.com, Tambo.
Yes, I would definitely say that's something we do in the mastermind program all the time. And other thing too is like it's all what you're trying for the biggest thing I'll say actually is this. You should want to watch content that talks about MME so you can get a process for how that will apply, and then you can bring that over to single entry. Like I know people think they're not correlated at all. It's the same thing when I talk about an optimizer. It's the Uno reverse of when people are like, well, I only play 1 to 3 lineups. I don't need an optimizer. You're lost. You're way behind the field. You have no clue what you're even putting in for a projection. Try doing it in basketball or something like that. You're even more dead. So it's not to one-up it or say like what you shouldn't have to do, but it's the same thing backwards. If you know what people are doing in large field, it gives you a really good idea of what they're bringing over to single entry, how they're going to play it more safe, all of that, and you can find out what you're up against and be able to play against that. That's one of the biggest ways to get an edge in single entry in general.
Or just use who I play, because I play against the field every week anyway, knowingly or not.
That's right. Can do that too.
And I've had some good success in those smaller tournaments, as I've told you before, just because I don't really care. I'm just playing the guys that I want to play. I'm not too concerned about the optimizer. But you and I also talk it through. Like I feel like I am very good at identifying how lineups are going to get built. I just don't want to build them that way.
Yeah. That's the key. And like talked about it a bunch of different ways, but I certainly think that's you found a ton of success with it this season already, and it continues even last week again. So let's keep it rolling.
Jordan asks, how important is it to leave salary on the table on the table versus spending it all. I feel like if you spend it all, you're going to be very similar to the field. I don't think that's true. I don't think it matters if you leave $500 on the table or not, or $200 or use it all, unless you are building the absolute stone chalk lineup.
Yeah, I'm on a Mayo show, so I'll say you use code Mayo, go get the mastermind, go to shipitnation.com/mastermind. I just did this, so I bring it up for this reason because it's a great question. I did this last week, Pat, and I did my full PGA optimizer process using SaberSim and just going through it all to show how it worked out. And you will actually see when you're using that, it really sets you apart to show you, like, if you do spend all your salary, it's crazy. This was the number one feedback piece from the community over there saying it was wild to me to see how you could have so many lineups that spent $49.9 or even the full $50K that were still either built completely different or had a ton of lower owned plays that I still loved, or that in my case, I still loved, that fit everything you were looking for and projected well and looked good, all those factors and more. So in Showdown, leave a bunch of salary. On weeks, if you're playing a wave edge, fine to leave some salary, but typically there's an upgrade there that you're going to like, or that the system's going to like, or projections are going to like, and even yourself probably going to like. So I just don't think it's a problem at all.
Rye, Thompson, and Dietrich as a single entry core. Do you like that? I would change Thompson into Finau and leave in Dietrich if you wanted to, or someone else in the eights, because, Dietrich could be good, could be bad, but I just like Finau objectively more than Thompson, and it saves you a bit of money.
Yeah, I'm fine with either. Honestly, I just think it's still, once you're going that route, you're not going with Scottie or Rory. So I'm fine with that. You're already, like we talked about a little bit on this show, where even when we're talking about MME, it was what I was just mentioning and applying it to single entry. If you're not going Scottie and Rory, you're not finding that win equity. You're needing now to find the winner probably. And those guys are potential for sure. If it's not Scottie or Rory, I could see one of Rye, Thompson, Dietrich, even though that sounds insane when you name those names. But Dietrich, Thompson for sure. Rye, these are all of them have won recently, right? If not in the last year. Rye finally got off. Remember, Billy Horschel was cheering him up. TGL superstar, by the way. Dirty Bird Billy Horschel
the MVP.
was cheering up.
I was there when Rye won. I was at the window when Rye won.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Your Sedgefield spot, man. That's your tournament. That's your other. I always give you, like, everyone knows RBC Heritage and your ties to that, because the Siwoo Kim year with, who was it that actually ended up beating him? I forget now. Kadaira, Satoshi. Yeah, so there was that. But Dietrich, we just talked about getting his win. And Thompson, remember last year, looked unstoppable in that win. So if you're looking to make up a winner, it's there. It's just you have to have them. So that's what you got to think about when you're building that lineup out as your single entry.
Of note, I guess Dietrich, did Scottie play Phoenix this year? I can't remember. Was that his first start back, second start back? Whatever it was. The other tournaments the other tournaments didn't involve both Scottie and Rory in them. Keep that in mind.
Scottie finished 25th in that one.
Yeah.
It was the second week back. Remember the first week he sort of coasted to a ninth, led the field in approach, and everyone's like, holy shit, like he literally is fine. And then, of course, he let down in Phoenix the week after, where he has such good history.
Jordan in the chat said that Lee Hodges had rib injuries. Did Xander set the thing off? Just Marilyn Manson surgeries for everyone on tour?
I don't know. How's it been working out, though?
Xander led the field in approach last week at Valspar.
It must need extra flexibility. There it is.
Yeah, he can really get low and pop up. Not everyone can have the Joaquin Neiman swing. You have to remove some ribs in order to be able to do that if you're just a regular person. Ross asks, what percentage of lineups won't have one of Rory or Scottie as the starting point? I don't think it's going to be many, just looking at what y'all are building. Y'all, it's a choice. I just heard a lot of y'all being down in North Carolina and being very confused when it was just me standing there and not multiple people. It's like, I'm just one person. You mean you. But that's a story for a different day. I'd say 70% of lineups probably start with one of them.
Yeah, I would say it's a simple math equation. If you think Rory's going to be 30 and Scottie's going to be 30 and very few play them together, but you give it a few more points, it's that plus that plus that minus 100 gives you the difference, and you'll have the answer. So that's about the number. If you think 60% owned and then add a little bit, then 35% of the lineups won't have them, because if you give them 30-30 and then 5% that they're together, you got it.
Tambo, what's your feels on your boy Sungjae this week? Seems very unliked this week, and these are good spots at the spots I like him the most. Fourth at Torrey, good Augusta successes, comp courses. I don't know if Augusta is a comp course. I get the similarities and why people play here to prep for Augusta, but you could also just balance it on good players have won the Houston Open or have done well at the good Houston Open when they play, and good players play well at the Masters too. It's not like Toasties popping up.
That's what it is. It's what you always said. We've done this for years, where this one comes up. It's like, man, it just seems like it's Augusta guys. yeah, like it's a smaller field at Augusta National. They play it all the time. They have good success, and it's a lot of the best players in the entire world. So yeah, the good players play good. That's the fast cars go fast is a conversation I had with a guy about a NASCAR DFS video I did the other day, and he said fast cars go fast. It's the same thing. Good players play good in golf. That's kind of the setup there. But yeah, Sungjae, if you throw him in your pool, I'm definitely playing him. I always am. And if he does well, I don't think it's going to be because of those comps. I think it's just going to be a good week for Sungjae. But when you're comparing him around some of the other guys there and you want to make a decision, it's up to you. I'm going to play the guy I keep playing, and we'll deal with it from there. So Sungjae at 9,300 will go into the pool.
John asks, let's see. John says Knapp has 4 consecutive top 25s, a bad week last week, and he's going to be less than 10%. Seems strange. I just worry that if he doesn't hit all the greens in regulation, that he's just not going to be able to chip himself out of it. He's been running a hot putter too.
Shout out to John, OG, really good dude. He's actually in the Ship It Nation Discord. He's friends with Bridgman's caddy. Okay. And I don't know, like I said yesterday on the show, I don't know if he's supposed to be sharing the text, but he is. And he's been showing us the stuff. And we've been riding Bridgman like crazy. But one of the conversations about Bridgman was playing the Florida swing. We he was primed for that, those greens, all that. Now he's been playing really good otherwise too. And he played good here last year. So that's a question for John, if Bridgman's the guy to keep going with. But do you think there's anything that goes with that, Pat, with a guy like Knapp as well? Like Knapp was sort of, we know what he is. He's a bit more boomer bust, but he's really good lately. So do you think any of that carries over and you still keep playing him, or what do you think with Jake Knapp?
I think you probably can keep playing him. It's not that I equate this exactly, because I think the scrambling is much more difficult at this course, but I think that off the tee, one of the reasons I went back to Nikolai at this spot is I think like I said, you can spray it and pray it off the tee, which is very similar to what you can do in Mexico. Obviously a place where Jake Knapp has won. Steven Jaeger had done very well there as well, but he had an elite scrambling game to go along with it. So I think if you want to look at Mexico and see some of the ball striking guys who did well there, and then see who historically has a very good around the green game, then I think you're closer to getting what you want at this course. I do not trust Jake Knapp to get it up and down over and over and over. And the greens and reg here are high-ish, but you can really chip yourself out of this tournament with the way that these greens are constructed.
I think it's a really good breakdown of it. And just the only thing I can add to apply to it would be, what you're getting. Like if you feel like Jake Knapp is a, Hovland style, Thigala style, and I wouldn't put him in that. I'm just saying, like, if you feel like at 7,700, that's disrespectful or too cheap, the risk you're taking with going there, but you know what the reward can be too. And the price is pretty good, right? He's not even close to the average price was 83.33. He's 7,700. If you're saying, well, what's the difference between Kitayama and Rogers? You're probably right. And if that's the case, ride the form, hope it goes your way. But if it goes the way Pat just explained, that's something you just have to keep in mind. So maybe think about that with your overall build after you're putting him in. Don't be putting, like we talked about earlier, not putting Luke List, Charlie Hoffman, and someone random down there, because then it just gets a bit too tricky. You need a lot of things to go your way. This would be a thought process of, I'm going to play Knapp over Davis Riley, who everybody thinks is, God's gift right now, is going to do it because it's in Texas and he's playing well. Maybe he does. You can play both, but it's also a way to think about it when you're building your single entry. There's some more single entry thoughts there for you.
Timothy asks, one optimizer has Grazerman higher on the small. It's not a fucking question, asshole. Jesus Christ. Why are you watching this and asking me a question? Just listen to the optimizer. You'll be good to go. Fuck off.
It's not, well, he didn't even ask a question, so he didn't ask.
It's for questions. Questions are what we want, not your random observations. You can just make those on your Twitter timeline where no one follows you. Then you can just talk into the void. That would be fine. Okay? That's where you can keep these comments for.
That's the first. I didn't hear that one before. That was a good one. You can put them on your Twitter where nobody follows you.
Yeah, just that's where these comments deserve to go. They're comments. We're asking for questions in the question and answer period. All right. Who is your best low-owned AM and PM players? It's probably all the guys we talked about at the bottom. It's not like, we've talked about Toasty a ton. Like, what do you think Toasty comes in at in, let's say, the giant $20 this week? Like 5%, maybe 7%.
5 to 7 would be the range, and it could be 4 to 7. It could be 4 to 8. You give them a bigger range. It's somewhere in there. It's nothing insane.
How much do you factor in good form versus history here? There's not a lot of history to go off of. It's the fifth or sixth year it's been at Memorial Park. It's only the second year that it's been played in March. So everything is dormant. There's no rough around. Like I said before, I'm looking more for a skill set of players. I want big drivers You can get away with small drivers who are accurate that their long irons really well. That was sort of the Akshay path last year. If you play someone like Siwoo, that's what you're hoping for this week. Aaron Rai is another one because they have good short games if they do miss, but they are good with their longer irons. The problem with those two guys is they can't putt. So you want someone with like good short game, good putting to make up for maybe a lack of iron success from the entire field. This course is really long. It's 7,500 yards. It's a par 70.
Yeah. I think you said it best with like the skill set factor and whatnot. I'm thinking a lot more about that, but I'm almost always a recent forum guy and what have you done for me lately and go with that. And it all depends on how people are using that to build their lineups, which I'm then looking against and trying to get as much information as possible heading into a tournament to know what others are doing and what I can do to either match, exceed, leverage, or get different against, depending on what I want to do for the week.
Thoughts on Grayson Sig or Andrew Novak as last man in? I would take Novak. I mean, it's probably not true. I probably have played Grayson Sig at some point. I definitely have not played him in 2 years.
Yeah, I think Novak over Sig for me there for sure. But I don't really have a high opinion on either, to be honest.
Do you guys ever use negative chatter on a player as fuel to use them more in DFS, being that they'll be subjectively less owned if that's a community sentiment, i.e. Finau? I didn't realize people were down on Finau. I bet Finau to win. I like Finau this week.
There's injury conversation, like there's some injury conversation on Finau. I forgot to mention that earlier, but it's been brought up by some of the other podcasts and stuff. So,
what is it? Well, what's the injury? Like the one that he had?
I forget.
Like the one that he had coming into the year?
No, I don't know. Maybe the chat will probably know more than I will about it. Like I said, that's the stuff I guess to answer the question, because it will tie into what you're asking me, is the same. It's not that I go get a bunch more of them because of it. It just typically leads to me having more because I ignore that stuff all the time. We've seen it plenty of times. Oh, this guy's neck is sore. He wins. Oh, this guy said he had the worst. Victor Hovland. Miscut, 38th, 22nd. My game's not where it needs to be. I'm working on it. Wins. Like that's golf.
Apparently last year, Toasty had a shoulder and neck injury at this event. He came second.
Yeah, there you go.
Tony Finau. If I type in Tony Finau injury, my video from the 2018 Masters is the first hit that comes up. Man, I look good.
What if you type it in the chat on X? Someone was talking about it last night. I don't know. I use X like a search engine sometimes, and it helps quite a bit, and that's where you might find it. But I forget exactly what they said, but it was something to do with that. And I just don't care. That's the difference. And if he's injured and they victory lap it, good for you. I'll be ready to play next week. I built my bankroll up to be able to play every week of the season and showdown, so I'm not really worried about that. And I know you can't get too in the weeds on that stuff unless you have something severe. If they're teeing it up, it's just like when people say the Scottie versus Rory thing, like they're just here to tune up. I said it yesterday, but I'll say it again. If they're sucking on Sunday, then yeah, it's a good thing to say. Yeah, well, it was a good tune up. I'm all ready now. I got a little bit ready for Augusta. Like Rory was at Augusta National yesterday or whatever, people following his jet around. Other players were there too. It's, in general, it's a good thing to say after the fact, but you don't think if Rory's in the mix on Sunday, he's going to close the door and win? He's definitely going to. It's just the way it is.
I tend to agree. It's like, I think it was Jeff who asked me, he's like, well, do you think that people go out of their way to play certain shots to prep for Augusta? It's like, no, I think this course is conducive with playing shots that do happen at Augusta, because you're just not going to hit every green. It's not like you're intentionally missing the green so you can have a few chips out there. If that's what you wanted, just go to fucking Augusta right now and hit some chips.
They can practice their run to that. And that's like more to me like a round 4 thing. Like if everyone's piling in on Scottie for round 4 because he kind of had a bad week, but they saw something on Saturday with his approach, and then on Sunday he is firing away. It can go good, it can go bad. Just like a guy like Siwoo on Sundays, really good. Because it's really good to play. It doesn't mean he's always really good, but it's usually he fires at every pin and puts it to 5 feet and makes them, or he fires at every pin and he's off the green on all of them and then ends up being a horrible round. But you want to play guys like that. That's sort of the whole point. That's how you get the nuke rounds or the top rounds of the day. You're going to have some landmines. You're going to have some that you nail dead on. That's kind of the setup, I think. And John, our guy OG in there, says it was on a podcast with Stewart. He said issues with Finau made it sound personal issues strange. Who knows?
He is dealing with that lawsuit. Was it Stewart from Mad TV he was talking to?
I don't know. It's probably, he said it was Wiley. There you go. So it was Keith Stewart. Keith Stewart he's talking about.
Keith Stewart. Okay.
Again, this guy's been dealing with that stuff forever. So who knows?
Yeah, it could be something new, and you have no idea how that affects anyone at the same time too. Like some guys. Just look at Jordan. Jordan internalized personal problems pretty well and just put it all out onto the court. Then he went back to his real life being an absolute shambles.
Is this a new lawsuit? Like I know about So January 21st, this
Yeah.
one's from
I just know he's been-
2025.
Yeah, he's
It
been-
says it was dismissed by a Utah County judge.
Oh, is it? I mean, maybe it's different personal problems that we don't know about. I mean, they're personal. It's probably why we don't know about them. But that affects people in so many different ways. I'm like you. Like, there are certain times where, hey, this guy is coming back off a shoulder injury that's kept him out. It's like, yeah, probably, pump the brakes on him first week back. Like I did with Xander the first week that he came back. It was like, okay. Like, I'm just not going to play him at API. I have no idea coming off a rib injury how this is going to go, and I'm still paying max price for him. If they drop Xander $3,000 the week that he came back off his injury, I probably would have played him. But that's more how I like to see these injuries play itself out. If guys have actually missed time, then I become a bit more concerned rather than, oh yeah, he hurt his neck. Like, did he? Why is he still playing?
With Xander, I think you were a little bit more concerned because it was a rib surgery,
Yeah.
and not a rib injury. in your world.
Yes, correct.
It obviously wasn't injury, but you were seeing it as a surgery, so you were a little bit more concerned.
Michael asked thoughts on Bo Hossman. I'm just going to take a hard pass on Bo Hossler right now. Ryan says, how do we feel about Dunlap? The man bombs it off the tee and can score in bunches. He bombs it off the tee. Unfortunately, I know there's not a lot of water here. He'll find it, and then he'll find bushes to hit into and have to take OB penalties. He is averaging, I brought this up yesterday, he's averaging -6 strokes lost off the tee on average over his past 5 events. It's incredible.
He's a pure, I mean, you know what you're playing there, but then the guy that was screaming at us in the chat earlier, there's so many other guys there. Olson, McCarty, Schmid, Salinda, tons of options that you could go to in that range. So pick your poison and get involved. If you like Dunlap and he's your guy and you think Pat's wrong, then jump in on Dunlap and play him.
I mean, I'm not wrong on what his stats are. I could be wrong that he does.
That's correct.
He might play. Yes. He played well at this tournament last year as well, and even started out over par when I was doing my review of the tournaments and got it back together pretty quickly. Made a ton of putts, but until the driver gets a little bit fixed, I'm a bit pensive of throwing him in. Hey, Golf Tips Checker, shout out to your hard work in keeping everything together and keeping track of everyone. Our boy Aldrich bombs Pot Geeter is well tipped. Thoughts? Hard pass for me here. He would have to take, I think this course is, I don't want to say it's too hard for him, but he's just so bad around the greens that, maybe off the shaved surfaces, maybe that's like something that plays to his skill set a little bit better. I can't really speak to that because I don't have that much familiarity with the overall scope of his game, but just overall, he is so bad around the greens. It's kind of embarrassing. Let's see. And Aldrich is 134th in approach over the past 24 rounds in this field as well. Like, he bombs it, and that's about all he does right now. And you just need him at a course. Like in Mexico, you can get away with it because it's super easy. Like, you don't have to hit your approaches super close. You can make a ton of putts because they still have gigantic greens. Here, you do need to bomb it. And maybe you can get away with some bad approach play, but you can't get away with bad chipping and putting at the same time. So I'm just hard out there. If he's going to be popular,
anything can happen, but you may
let anyone else play him. And if he's going to be popular, let other people play him.
Yeah, and all I was gonna say is that's like a huge point that you just made. Though I think there is a lot of people out there that are just like bombers. When it's like you said, it's not quite the same as that. And you can still definitely see bombers that end up there, but it's bombers that came through with all the other stats. So it's not saying they can't do it. It's just making the comparison to your point that it's not exactly what everybody might think when it comes down to it.
How does Ricky's short game compare to the players in this field recently? I mean, you can subscribe to fantasynational.com/Mayo and check that for yourself. That's a plug to get in there. Get the monthly now and get it all the way through Heritage right now and all of the weeks in between, and access to the only app you're ever going to need to use to track the leaderboard, the best leaderboard app for the PGA Tour. Honestly, I don't feel like looking it up because I don't care about Ricky.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, another spot. I mean, Ricky's in a good price point this week. If you like that, like, it's just like I said, there's so many guys in that range that if you feel like he's your guy, just like the Dunlap thing, you can commit to it and get different there that way. I think that's another way to do it.
Will starting without Scottie or Rory be more popular than starting with one of them? No, it will not.
It might. I think it is, right? Because the math.
No, because the math we said will be one.
If they're both 30, though, I'm saying, and there's just a small number of them together. If Scottie's 30,
yeah. So the majority of lineups will have either Scottie or Rory in them.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought he was saying against one or the other. So I got you.
No, yeah. So it'll be one or like Scottie or Rory or the field. How will people start the lineups? It will be with Scottie or Rory versus not using them at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now he was classifying for both. I got you.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. John said the Finau personal issues just sounded strange. I think you touched on this earlier, but I'm losing too much in win equity by starting my lineup with Jaeger and playing all 8K guys. Maybe, but you might, as you said, you're playing the 6-6 game at that point, right? That you hope that
let's
one
go
of
back
your
to when we
guys,
built the lineups with Day.
yeah, you feel like you're trying to sneak out a win of one of those 6 guys, but the bottom end of your lineup has a much better chance of sneaking through than if you try to build a Scottie with Minwoo and have to use 3 6K guys.
Exactly. Yep.
Odds of TGL coming back, I would probably say 100%, honestly.
As much as I talk shit, obviously that's 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like it had more organic traction by the end of the year. Like it even just scanning during, it seemed like more people were into the finals, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I think it was just funny the odds and the rating stuff, or sorry, the rating stuff. Like
that went away
3 weeks ago when they were bad. It was like they beat everything, but they beat it was like they beat a women's basketball game, and people were like, "Yay, that means win!" But then like the other night during the semifinals, they got 400 and something thousand viewers, and the previous year a NCAA women's game had more views. So I don't know how TGL thinks about it, but they're not going to pack it in anytime soon. They'll be back next year for sure.
No, and I think that now that they have a baseline of those rates, I think they can tweak the rules a little bit too to make it a bit more engaging. I just think if they make it honestly shorter, more people would watch.
Yeah, we'll see.
I
think it's
make it an hour.
It's
make
the
it
big average off the first 2 events when they had it pre-planned and paid for and all that stuff. We'll see how the ratings hold up next year. It still goes to Feinberg's original post. The question Sam's asking is, ask that question after year 2 and see, and maybe it does stick around. Maybe people love it all of a sudden, but I think it's very, very niche.
All right, well, that's it for the Pat Mayo Experience. Smash the like and sub to the channel while you're here. Those ratings and reviews on the podcast always go a long way. Beyond the trip giveaway that I'm doing to Toronto for the PME Live, Blue Jays, Hotel, Canadian Open tickets that you'll be finding out about next week, or if you sub to the newsletter, you'll get that in advance first, along with the tickets to the live show. I'll probably be doing some Masters giveaways as well. I think I'm going to start Masters week early. What I'm going to do, Tambo, I'm going to find someone and we're going to talk through how the season has been going for each of the players to get some people like caught up on what's been going on. Because as you know, this is probably the biggest week of the year for people subbing to Ship It Nation. I know for Fantasy National, the Masters is always the biggest. For my channel in terms of views, and in golf in particular, NFL is a different story. But so many people come out of the woodwork for the Masters that it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's the Super Bowl PGA. It's amazing for golf, I should say, but we're playing PGA DFS. But yeah, for golf, it's definitely the Super Bowl of that. It's going to be an awesome week doing a ton of different content shows, different pieces that you do, all that stuff. It's always a good time.
Yeah, and we're only 430 subs away from 50,000. So maybe there'll be some sort of 50,000 giveaway when we get to that many subs on YouTube. You can help us out right now and go do that. And then I can lock in the giveaways to go do it. Share the show around. My cheat sheet will be coming out later on this evening. That'll be posted to the newsletter, and it will be posted on X as well. If you see it on X, please go share it around. That really does help me out in helping bump up the subs for all of this. All right. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.